What I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through my 10 years of experience in academia, all the different PowerPoints I've seen, and the knowledge that I've absorbed from them. And what I'm going to do is go through a guide, okay, a very quick, simple guide on how to make PowerPoints that don't suck, okay? How to make PowerPoints that engage instead of distract from your message. Is the age of Microsoft PowerPoint at an end? Are PowerPoints dead? Should they be absolutely banned from any sort of academic talk? Most academics would say absolutely not. I rely on my PowerPoints, but depending on what business you're in, Jeff Bezos, for example, at Amazon, he was notorious for banning PowerPoints as part of presentations in meetings. Hated them. Now what you'll find is there is a split. People have different opinions. Half of people think PowerPoints ruin presentations. They're an old, musty, stupid technique. They don't work very well. They're not engaging. They're dreadful, okay? Then you'll have other people who swear by PowerPoint. They could not physically stand up and give a talk without a PowerPoint sitting behind them. Now the truth is somewhere in between. PowerPoint is not bad, okay? It's just that most people who use it don't know what they're doing, okay? Bad PowerPoints are bad. Bad slides are bad. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through my 10 years of experience in academia, all the different PowerPoints I've seen, and the knowledge that I've absorbed from them. So you've probably heard me say this before, but too much text on slides is the cardinal sin when it comes to presenting or public speaking. If you're using PowerPoint to support your presentation, and what you do is you cram each slide full of text, you may as well have given each and every member of the audience a migraine pill. Not one that cures migraines, one that gives them a migraine. So why is this such a problem? Well, this goes back to the dual coding theory of how mental processing works. How do our minds process information? Well, we actually do this through two different channels. What we see, the visual channel, and what we hear. Now, the problem is that these two channels must harmonize, but they cannot be identical, okay? So what does this look like in a presentation format? Well, if you put a paragraph of text on a slide and then you read it word for word to the audience, what happens is the audience finishes reading the paragraph before you do. And you've probably felt this yourself, sitting in an audience listening to a talk. So why are you so much faster at reading than the speaker? Well, because you can read more quickly in your mind than out loud. And in particular, the presenter should not be speaking too fast during a presentation. They should be speaking at a conversational pace, much slower than the pace you're reading at in your mind. So what ends up happening is the speaker gets about halfway through reading the paragraph word for word to you, but you've already read the whole thing, okay? And then what you need to do is suffer through them reading the last half of the paragraph, which you already have read, okay? Could be a useful method for torture in a POW camp. So here's what you can do. The simplest thing you can do to improve your PowerPoints, just reduce the amount of text. Now that makes some people nervous because they feel like maybe they'll forget their main points if they aren't word for word on the screen. Now in that case, the answer is not more text, okay? It's more practice. So a good rule of thumb when you're condensing down the text on a slide is to have no more than 5 bullet points on a slide. Okay, 5 is your limit. And each bullet point shouldn't be longer than one line. What the bullet points should do is introduce a point, and then you expand on it. And if you're worried about the audience looking at you instead of your slides and the pressure that brings, well, that's just tough, okay? This is one of the things you need to get used to be a good presenter. Okay, so when I'm talking about too much text, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about, okay? Now, bear in mind, animation and transitions have been used here to layer in the text, but by the time you get to this point, it's just too much, okay? Too much text. This slide's particularly bad, okay? So the text is all in bold and it's condensed, not condensed. The text is just shoved in there, okay? This is a particularly ugly slide. This is not the kind of thing. If this pops up, students are gonna switch off, okay? Your audience is gonna switch off as well. That one's even worse, okay? That's all just one big paragraph. We wanna avoid paragraphs completely. Again, yes, animations are being used, but it's just too much, okay? A lot of this information is things that are on you as the presenter to tell the audience, okay? You're not reading to them. You are presenting to them. Presentation is a performance, okay? It's not a book club where you're gonna read to people. People know how to read. Again, just too much text. Way too much. This is my version of those slides that you just saw, but you'll notice it looks It's the same lecture, but it looks nothing alike, okay? So here, very little text. This is all me speaking, telling a story through this with animations. No text whatsoever, really. Starting to have some text show up here. But again, we're using simple animations and a lot of visual aids to move through. Okay, there's some text, but again, we're keeping it really minimal. These are just anchor points. Okay, again, minimal text, a lot of visual aids doing a lot of work here, and we're using bold font intentionally. Okay, so what if you've minimized the text, you've condensed your main points down as much as you can, but the slide still looks a bit too busy. Okay, there's a couple too many bullet points, but too much text. You're worried that as soon as the audience looks at it, they're just going to give up and they're going to jump out the window. What you can do is use simple animations and transitions to layer information progressively as you navigate the audience through your slide. Here's an example of what that looks like. So there was a lecture I did on neuroglial cells for biomedical science students, and what lectures would normally do here is just put a big list, each of the names of the different type of neuroglial cells, where they're found, and a little paragraph about them on a single slide. Looks really ugly. Now what you can do to layer that information and distinguish between each type of cell is something like this. So we're saying neuroglial cells, which ones are found in the peripheral nervous system. So we've got simple animation and transition here, going through each type of cell. So we've got Schwann cell, then that moves over to the side, the name stays. Then we've got satellite cell, then that's going to move over. Okay, this is really easy to do in PowerPoint. Then we shift to central nervous system, and there's a shift that actually happens on the screen. So you don't really need to verbally articulate that to the students. They can see it. And we've also changed colors here, but I'll come back to that later. Simple animations continued. We go oligodendrocyte. We come in with the ependymal cells, and we keep going through, okay? Really simple animations. Instead of just flooding the slide with text, we are layering it. Okay, this is one slide, but we've layered and removed text as we go through each point, and we've kept some behind at the end. It's a really powerful way of layering information. Okay, now we're moving on to color. This one is criminally underrated and overlooked. There's nothing worse than black text on white slide with zero color whatsoever. Now, most of the arguments I hear against the use of color in PowerPoints are to do with accessibility, but you can marry the two as long as you always keep contrast in mind. For example, black text on a white background is high contrast, okay? It's easy to see, easy to read for the entire audience, even if anyone in the audience has some sort of visual impairment. Same could be said of white text on a black background, but something like navy on black, that's almost impossible to see. Similar to light fonts on light backgrounds. But as long as you keep contrast high, you can do some really wonderful things. And you can start to use color not simply as window dressing, but to subtly help explain your points. Take a look at this slide. We're talking about different causes of male infertility. This is taken from a lecture. Notice how we've used somewhat of a muted color, the navy, for these causes on the right-hand side, but the main cause, and I've actually labeled it predominant cause here, sperm and semen quality, that is with this really bright, vibrant color, this pink, and that is meant to emphasize that most of the time, this is the cause of male infertility. Whereas these other reasons, yes, they're important to know about, but they're in a more muted color. When it comes to visual aids, I need to lay down the law here. If you put a diagram or any sort of image on your slide and you don't make any reference to it, and then you click next slide, I should be able to walk up on stage and legally slap you. Oh, wow! Ever heard of Chekhov's gun? If you show a gun hanging on the wall in the first act, it must go off by the third. Essentially what this means is don't include details that never pay off. If you put a diagram on screen and I'm in the audience, I'm waiting for you to walk me through it. If you put 3 graphs up, I'm expecting you to explain what each one of those graphs means. Now, if you explain 2 of the graphs and leave out the third, and then you hit next slide, I'm sat there wondering what was going on with that third graph. And I'm trying to figure it out myself. And by the time I snap out of that, you've steamrolled ahead, you're about 2-3 slides ahead, and I'm lost, okay? I've disengaged from the talk. Now remember, there's a reason laser pointers exist, folks, okay? Use them. You can even combine the use of color and simple animations to help you explain those graphs. Check out this example of female fertility. Okay, there's a lot of different lines on this graph. But what I want to draw their attention, and I want to hold their hand and bring them through the graph through my perspective. Okay, there's something I'm trying to get them to understand from this graph. So we use simple animations. We have the text show up incrementally rather than flooding the slide right at the start. And we're using color. Okay, color animation, it's highlighting a certain part of the graph that I'm going to explain to them. And then when we move to the next part, another color shows up, and the next part, because these are different phases of data that I'm sort of distinguishing between when I talk about them. And it's really simple to do this. And it just makes, if this slide pops up at the start without any color, even though I'm drawing attention to certain parts of the text and I have minimized it somewhat, it's still a bit busy, okay? But we can use simple animation, color, and minimal text to emphasize points and bring people through a slide with real ease, okay? And making sure they understand the points. Okay, this one's a bonus tip for people out there preparing lecture slides or those who want to increase audience engagement. Use tools like Vivox, okay? They plug right into Microsoft PowerPoint and you can do some fantastic engaging things. You can do multiple choice questions, you can do polls, surveys, great for tracking engagement and improving engagement from your audience as well, but also collecting feedback on what people thought of your lesson, of your talk, of your presentation. Okay, last bonus tip, probably the biggest power move for an academic presentation. You get to the end of your talk. Someone asks a really obscure question and the crowd looks at you, wondering if you know the answer. You can hear a pin drop. Then you say, yeah, I was wondering when someone would ask that. You click your laser pointer, you flick to a secret slide hidden after your ending slide, which contains a thought-out response and explanation of your answer to that particular question. Now, I've only seen this done a handful of times, and it won't always pay off when you prepare these questions and answers, but it is a good habit to get into because it gets you thinking about the questions that might be asked and the answers you might have to have at the ready. And it's something students in particular are always nervous about. They're always nervous about being asked questions maybe they don't know the answer to. And what they end up doing is, if some of their peers are in the audience, they will plant a question. Okay, they'll get one of their friends who are sitting in the audience to get ready to raise their hand and ask them a question that they already know the answer to. Okay, and then they have the gall to think that us lecturers don't know that that's what they're doing. Okay, we see you. We see you doing this. And if I see you doing that, if I see a student giving you a real softball question that it sounds like you've already prepared for, that you've been ready for, you've planted them, I'm going to try and find the hardest question possible to ask you. Okay, folks, let me know, did I miss anything? What would you say are some good ways of improving PowerPoint presentations? I want you to let me know the answer to that down in the comments below. And folks, if this is something you struggle with, if you are really bad at Microsoft PowerPoint and it's holding your presentations back, for a limited time only, I'm offering free academic consult calls, okay? This is 20 minutes. You and I'll sit down over Zoom and we'll go through where you are in your academic journey and where you want to be. Are there skills like academic writing and presentation skills that can help you get there? Is this something I can coach you through? We'll find that out in the 20-minute academic consult call. And I'll put the link in the description of today's video.